Rick, welcome into the show.
Thanks. I appreciate you having me on today.
Last time I saw you was you were with your brother, Chris Spielman. I was filling in on Good Morning Football. You guys were memorable guests. I enjoyed having you in studio. So thank you for joining us here in Dallas to talk a little bit about the draft. But I am curious because I love when you guys go from, the draft room to the other side of it, the analyst. How different of a pivot has that been for you? Where it's one thing to have in the building having spirited debates about some of your thoughts on these prospects to now having the entire internet come at you about some of your spirited thoughts.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm glad me and my brother, usually when we're together on a show, that ruins a lot of people's careers. So luckily you were able to survive that and move on. But I would say that the difference is you're so honed in on your team and what you need to address in the draft and the process. But when you become an analyst, you get a more global view. So I had to watch all 32 teams and how they responded. And it's interesting, just the personalities of the general managers. And, some teams will be more lenient on character guys. Other teams build it other general managers build it this way. So it's always kind of fascinating in my opinion, to get a global view of how each guy is building their roster and filling their needs.
Rick, when you look at what Dallas did specifically, I thought there was something interesting whenever you heard the front office, the scouts, the coaches, they described the guys that they got. So the first round, they get Mazi Smith from Michigan, and they talk about him as a run stopper, but they say, man, we really think he can develop into a pass rusher. We think he's got the traits for this. Then they pick Luke Schoonmaker in the second round, and he's an advanced run blocker, but we really think he can develop into a seam threat. We see this on tape. We saw some clues of it. DeMarvion Overshown in the third round, the Texas linebacker, where he's been a little positionless throughout his career, but we really think he can develop and do some things off the edge. How much of that projection are you trusting the type of coaches you have in the building, and how much are you trusting your area scouts to have given you an accurate report on the work ethic and their coachability to get that out of them?
Yeah, well, when you're in those draft meetings, and most of the general managers have seen a lot of these players on tape and maybe have got an opportunity to see them play live here or there, or an exposure in an all-star game or the combine. But when we had a discrepancy and we were looking for let's take Mazi Smith, for example, who I think, I question sometimes, can he play hard every snap? And then you watch him in the Ohio State game, and he dominated that game. But you see the physical traits there. And then what I would ask the coaches are, we know what his strengths are. We know what his weaknesses are. We can tell you that from our scouting staff, from everybody that's evaluated him. But can he take it to the next level in this specific area, which you just mentioned? Can he become an inside pass rusher? And that's where the coach may go down and have a private workout with him, go to his pro day and work with him specifically on some of the things that he needs to improve on in that area. And I would put the onus on the coaches to come back and tell me, the coaches say, yes, I can get him to be a better inside pass rusher, or no, I tried to work with him. He couldn't take the coaching I was trying to teach. We just didn't have that connection. So I think he's just going to be a two-down nose tackle. But I have the utmost respect for Dan Quinn and watching what he's done with the Dallas defense and how he highlights the strengths of those players and adjusts his scheme according to what those players' strengths are. Overshown, who I think is a very athletic linebacker, and things that he can do in Dan Quinn's scheme. So you have to trust your coaches, but I always had the coaches heavily invested in the process and in the decision making, because those are the ones that are going to have to actually do the work to get them to where you're projecting them to be.
And Rick, I think you had your hidden gem as Junior Fehoko, who they got in the fourth round. What do you like about him?
Well, and this is a compliment. He's like watching a bull in a china shop because he is never stops. And technically, he'll need some work, but he's just a very good football player. He was fun to watch on tape because he goes 90 miles an hour. He has no stop in him whatsoever, plays with his hair on fire. You can see that he does have some pass rush ability. He needs to get a little stronger at the point, but he's always pursuing and chasing the ball. When you watch tape, it almost comes down to, did I just have fun watching him play football? And he definitely fit in that category for me.
Rick Spielman here on 105.3 The Fan. We've had a lot of conversations about the NFC East, and particularly Howie Roseman. You've been a GM. How hard is it to make some of the moves that Howie is making? And did you hear Peter Schrager's report that some of the GMs around the league are a little annoyed with Howie? Do you think they're truly annoyed, or they're just frustrated? Man, he seems to be kind of hitting on some good moves here lately.
I don't know if it's I don't know if it's annoyed or stuff. I go way back with Howie. Me and him have a very close relationship. There's only 32 of us or them now, but you have some kind of relationship with him. But I think what stuck out about Philadelphia was that they had accumulated picks in the future, and usually it was the opposite of what we saw with the LA Rams. Now the LA Rams were able to win a Super Bowl trophy. But Howie, because he accumulated all those picks, even though they lost some critical pieces this year, they were able to fill those pieces with some very good players because of the draft capital that he had to work with. So I think that's critical. And, you look at the different philosophies, what I was speaking earlier. Some teams, okay, we're going to go all in, and the picks aren't that important to us. But if you want to maintain success and you want to continue to put a competitive field year in and year out on that on the field, as a general manager, and call me old school, it's like, let's get the best team we possibly can, but I also have to have my eye on the future. And I think Howie's been able to balance both of those.
Rick, what has been your experience? First off, your thoughts on Will McClay as a talent evaluator, and then your experience over the years with the Jones boys.
Yeah, haven't had much interaction, more with Stephen than with Mr. Jones, but Will and me served on the GM committee at the time. I have the utmost respect for Will, not only as a person, but as a talent evaluator. And you sit there and you're running the guys on the road, or you're running the guys at meetings and things like that. And to me, there's no question that he's one of the better evaluators in this league. And you can see by some of the talent that he's brought in. But, I was at the Ohio State Pro Day and seeing him and seeing Dan Quinn. And I think they have just such a unique coaching staff that those guys go out there and I want to say get their hands dirty when they're out there watching these pro days, and they love the process. And when you got a coaching staff like they do in Dallas that not only are very good at what they do on Sundays, but in my opinion, going out there and putting in the time and energy to make sure that they understand the prospects. And so when they do have draft meetings, they're a part of it. And that's part of Will as well, in that scouting staff and that front office being on the same page with the coaches.
All right, being, as you said, an old school guy, what is the biggest football new school philosophy you've adapted where you never thought you would believe it, you never thought you'd change your mind on something with the way the analytics have gone? What has that been for you?
You gave me the answer.
Analytics?
Yeah, it's really became a tool. It's not the answer, but we started the process probably about 7 years ago. And, just start, how does this help us make better decisions? And, we built our analytics department up. We had a specific way we wanted to use analytics, and we were able to start cloning players based off of their combine numbers, based off of their psychological intelligence scores. And so they really came in, and I actually had them grade the players based off their numbers, not based off what they seen on tape. And what it did was something the old school way, we may not have recognized that from what the analytics or the numbers people brought up. They came up with it wasn't a theory, it was a fact that
There's your interview alarm.
Offensive tackle that had less than 33-inch arms, that ran slower than a 4 or a 5.25, There were 7 guys drafted in the first 2 rounds since 2000, and not one of them ever played up to the grade that we gave them. So those gave you some talking points, but they always created conversation that maybe you never have had before because you didn't have those numbers.
All right, I'm going to let you go with this because I know you got to run. You can even answer it fair or unfair because it's going to infuriate my co-host. It ticks him off when I tell him Dak is Cousins and Cousins is Dak. You had Kirk in Minnesota. Is that fair or unfair?
Well, I'll just say this. I'll give you the politically correct answer for everybody else to determine.
All right, get out of here. Go on to your other interview. Rick, we appreciate the time, man. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for having me on.